Hello, everyone. This is the RAFI Grocery Group. On the team, you have me, Robert, Arkadeep, Dario, and Ioanna. A little bit about RAFI. RAFI partners with policy and advocacy stakeholders to tackle inequitable access to food and corporate concentration of grocery markets across the United States. The goal of this quarter was to identify regions at risk of high grocery store market concentration, where RAFI can target advocacy and support services to counter potential monopolistic behavior. Our mentors were Dylan Halpern and Kelly Smallenberger. Our TA is Jack Sanderson. Going into our problem statement, we wanted to track grocery store market concentration changes in each county from 2010 to 2023 in order to understand how areas become dominated by large firms. The great thing is that counties offer a high level of detail and actionability for policy-related advocacy. We are also using insights to create data-driven, actionable evidence. This involves implementing an early warning system to flag regions with high grocery store market concentration, or in other words, potential grocery monopolies. This was done by looking at a variety of population characteristics, including average education level, income, and political leanings, and determining how much historical data is needed for each county. The goal is to help RAFI with actively maintaining a lower market concentration and ensuring fair grocery store prices across the United States. We are also aiming to visualize how regional traits are linked to changes in market concentration over time, which also helps RAFI identify areas that currently exhibit high market concentration or may be at risk in the future. This approach provides RAFI with a streamlined way to monitor market concentration trends across the US over time. Part of the process involved a data processing pipeline. From RAFI, we had already received the market concentration for each census tract from 2010 to 2023. We also had each tract's state and county ID as well as coordinates, allowing us to aggregate into counties. Although we had some socioeconomic and demographic data for each tract from RAFI, it was only relevant to 2023. We were interested in finding this data for all years from 2010 to 2023. We wanted to be able to identify and rule out factors that can affect a region's grocery store market concentration. Some of the sources we looked into include the ACS, the American Community Survey, where we were able to obtain the income and education of each tract from 2010 to 2023. We were also able to obtain data from the US Census, which provided us with information of each tract's population from 2010 to 2023, as well as the urban and rural geography and population for each tract. Data for the percent of rural blocks mapped each tract to its corresponding county. This data was collected in 2020, but blocks getting reclassified within such a short time frame are unlikely to change significantly, which makes this data relevant. We are also interested in collecting political data, so we turned to the NCSL, the National Conference of State Legislators, which helped us obtain the party composition of each tract's corresponding state House of Representatives and Senate. Again, we were able to map tracts to counties, which allowed us to aggregate by counties. However, this involves further processing, such as us having to weight each tract's metrics based on its population relative to its corresponding county. We also obtained population density by finding the area of each county. Columns were converted to proportions when needed, and we were able to quantify political division as a single value by averaging the party composition of each county's corresponding state, House, and Senate. The value reflects whether a state tends to lean more Republican or more Democrat across its legislative bodies. Now, moving on to the data set and modeling approach. The first essential step was feature selection, which involved removing highly correlated variables to improve model clarity. Then we modify the data set to create 3 versions for predictive modeling in order to test how much historical data is optimal for predicting current market concentration in each county. The first data set allows us to evaluate the effectiveness of using a 1-year historical window for prediction. The second data set allows us to evaluate the effectiveness of using up to a 2-year historical window for prediction. And finally, the third data set allows us to evaluate the effectiveness of using up to a 3-year historical window for prediction.
Given those historical data, our primary goal was to forecast future market concentration. To achieve that and find the best predictive model, we experimented with a variety of both linear and nonlinear algorithms and compared their predictive accuracy on unseen data. Ultimately, we selected the top 2 performing models. Our criterion was not just predictive power, but also interpretability, so we could better understand which features are driving our predictions. Moving to our key findings, after running all the different models on all 3 datasets, we found that data from up to 2 years prior was the most informative for making reliable predictions. One of the most interesting insights was that counties with high market concentration tend to remain so over time, and similarly, those with low levels continue to exhibit low concentration regardless of changes in other variables. Looking at the 2 plots of predictors' importance in both of our models, this is explained by the fact that market concentration from the previous year is the single strongest positive predictor. We also see that other socioeconomic variables like education and political division did show some influence, but their effects were minor and inconsistent compared to the dominant impact of past market concentration.
As we saw, the modeling showed that market concentration is quite persistent. The best predictors of future concentration were simply its past values. Socioeconomic factors surprisingly had limited predictive power. So, to build on those findings and support RAFI's policy advocacy, we undertook a descriptive case study. The goal was to highlight counties with noteworthy patterns, where concentration is especially high or low, or where it's changed significantly over time. We looked across counties to find those with the highest and lowest concentration, as well as the biggest increases and decreases over time. This helps us spot where things may be getting worse or where they're improving, and where policy attention might be most useful. In this map, we see the counties with the highest market concentration. There is a significant clustering around the central United States, with almost all of these counties located west of the Mississippi River. In contrast, the counties with the largest increase in market concentration are more dispersed, but still seem to be clustered between the Great Plains and Appalachia. On the flip side, the counties with the lowest market concentration are located on the coasts. And finally, and perhaps most encouragingly, the counties with the largest decrease in market concentration are spread out across the country. The maps we just presented are not static. To help RAFI in their advocacy efforts, we have built a responsive and interactive application through which they can get detailed information about the different counties. They can also use the legend to highlight different areas on the map. And finally, they can switch between areas of concern and the areas which are showing improvement.
In conclusion, the modeling showed that the strongest predictor was simply the previous year's market concentration, while the socioeconomic variables only had little explanatory power. In contrast, the regions that had the highest market concentration in 2023 only had limited overlap with those that had seen the largest increase between 2010 and 2023. Moreover, regions with improving market concentration are dispersed across the country and cut across political lines, giving hope for bipartisan advocacy. Our main policy recommendations is that regions that have the highest market concentration nowadays need immediate attention. However, it's also crucial to track those other regions that are showing a very rapid increase in market concentration. Looking forward, we would like to enhance the dataset by collecting data over a longer and more granular period of time than the one that was available to us. Moreover, we would also like applying more advanced spatial clustering methods to confirm about our suspicions about the underlying geographical patterns in market concentration. Likewise, we would like investigating the characteristics associated with regions with low market concentration to understand what's going on there. Finally, we would like to compare behavior across grocery chains in different regions, as seen in the supporting visual, to understand which ones are more or less prone to monopolistic dominance. Thank you so much.